David.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Christy. Hello, everybody. Our plan for today is we're going to walk you through an overview presentation. And then from there, we're going to go in and show you the curriculum firsthand in the online program. I wanted to give you just a little bit of background about myself and my co-presenter, David Noyes. A little bit about me. I'm the co-founder of Language Tree Online. We've been around since 2003, so quite a long time. We've always been very focused on language acquisition. It's been the past 5 years that we've been solely focused on English language development, primarily because there's such a big need in our US public schools, in particular for our secondary students who, have this very short ramp to, gain their English skills before graduation. A little bit about David. David is over all English learners, K-12 for Long Beach Unified School District. And it's one of the largest districts in California. He has his national boards in English language development. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to David, and he can give you a little bit of background.
Thanks, Jen. Are you able to go into present mode, or is it because of the Zoom, you're not able to go into present mode on the slides?
Yeah, I can. You know what I find? Sometimes I don't because it delays things, but let's try it.
Oh, okay.
And if I have issues, then I will go back.
Great, thank you. We had a request and I thought we might, oh, nice. It does make it much bigger. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us. And I hope that if you are on vacation, you are just taking some time to provide some self-care. And if you're still working, I hope you're looking forward to providing yourself with some self-care. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of background around the development of our ELD Level 2. A lot of the research that went into the development of ELD Level 2 had to do with the increasing numbers of our long-term English learners in our middle and high school, high schools across the United States. Those numbers have increased over the last 2 years based on some data that we have been looking at. Admittedly, we've had, a long-term English learner is a student that's actually been in the system for 8 to 10 years. And so they may have started in elementary, but matriculated into middle and high school and are still long-term English learners, and really wanting to be able to address the needs of those long-term English learners. There's also very limited resources for our secondary students. And what I mean when I say that is we have standards, whether it's based on the California English language development standards, it might be the Texas standards, we might be using a number of different English learner standards, but the resources that support those standards are pretty limited. Additionally, we started kind of looking at advanced foundational skills for our students in ELD Level 2, which is our long-term English learners, and they're beyond that beginning level stage of language acquisition, but they're still struggling with some of those advanced foundational skills. And we don't have a lot of resources that specifically address that area. And then lastly, the last couple of things you're going to see up there is some of the data is great, but we wanted to provide formative data for our teachers for next steps in their instruction. So a lot of times we get data at the end of the year, but at that point, those students have either moved on or we're not looking at data as a way to perform next steps. So for instructional practice. The last thing that we saw a lack of was culturally responsive pedagogy. Now, I realize that, when we start looking at the research around CRP or culturally responsive pedagogy, we have to look at academic achievement for our students that come from multiple backgrounds. We have to provide cultural competency and develop that critical consciousness. And so that was kind of the driver for the resources that we created in our Level 2. And somebody just asked where I come from. I come from Long Beach Unified School District in California. So In order to, thank you, Maria, in order to just get to know a little bit about you, and this kind of helps us kind of frame where we go today, is if you're comfortable writing in the comments section, or just, I guess you're on mute, we just want to know what types of formative and summative assessments you might be using in your school district, or lack thereof. So what types of assessments do you use for your English learners in your school or your school district, whether it's district-wide or statewide? If you wouldn't if you'd be so kind as to put that in the chat box, that would be great.
Okay, I think we'll, while you're thinking that over and putting your response in the chat box.
All right. I just want to call this out, access to MCAS for Massachusetts. These are the standards that you're using. The ELPA, that's in Oregon. So what the WIDA, we do a lot of alignment with WIDA, but using the test kits there, but that just gives us an idea of kind of where our research came from. And somebody's asking about level 2, and I want to, this is so, you guys are so candid, I love it. You're just kind of throwing those questions out there, but we call, for our resources, we call it ELD level 2 because we actually have a level 1 that we've created for our newcomers and our beginning language learners. So when we talk about our level 2s, we're talking about our intermediate and early advanced language learners. Sometimes we call them level 3s, and, you know, kind of, bridging level 4s, but there's a lot of ways that we kind of wrap the language around that. So if that gives you any insight into why we're calling that level ELD level 2, it's just that next level beyond level 1 with our product.
Great, thanks for that, David. I just want to spend a minute here to talk a little bit about our level 2 entry and exit assessments. You'll hear me refer to these buckets just for the lack of a better term. But what we did as we used backwards planning to develop the assessments using the latest ELD standards is we put them into areas. So we have the foundational literacy skills, the collaborative listening and speaking, and language function and construction. The unique part of this is that we only put one standard per question, but we have more than one question with that standard in it. The reason for that is that it allows, educators then to look at the data and really pinpoint the skill gaps that student may have. And as David mentioned, a lot of times with our LTELs, it's the more advanced foundational literacy skills that those gaps are found. So while, their speaking may be really good, but oftentimes, it's found in their writing abilities. So it's a great way to really, flush out where some of the challenges may reside for each individual student. In each one of these buckets area, we have approximately 25 questions. So you can see foundational, we have 28, collaborative listening and speaking 24, and language function and construction 29. So in total, there's 81 assessment questions, which is a very thorough assessment, but by no means do we recommend a student sit down and do, an 81 question assessment, but because it's online, they can go at their own pace, and wherever they leave off, go back in and, pick up where they left off. So these, and the entry and exit assessment, I should mention, they are very, very similar. The questions are not exactly the same, but we are assessing the same skills, and there's the same number of questions in each one of these assessment buckets. So that assessment, excuse me, those standards-based assessments align with the standards-based lesson modules. So how the lesson modules are broken out, again, it's those same, 3 buckets. And we have a really uniform teaching style from the perspective the virtual professor comes on. He provides the lesson input and information. Students have the ability to go back and watch that video as many times as they may need to. And then from there, they have activities. So we use a really multi-sensory approach with this. So there's, there's audio, there's visual, there's text. And we try to make the activities interesting and different so that it's not always, the same, like multiple choice or something like that. Um, and then we also have downloadable resources, and we'll talk a little bit more about those, but in a nutshell, the downloadables are for our level 2. The teacher PDF downloadables are really just providing the ability to do like a warm up and modeling for your students, whether that's in a small group instruction in the classroom, or now, given the environment we're in, it can be done during synchronous learning time, that you would do a little warm up and some modeling. And then from there, students can go back into the system. So in addition to all the lessons and activities, we have practice assignments. And we'll explain a little bit more about those. And it's easier to understand when I actually take you in and show you the program. But this just shows you the number of lessons in each one of these bucket areas. And then here on the right-hand side shows you what each lesson covers. And as Christy mentioned, she'll send out the presentation to everybody later, so you can have this for your own reference. I know it's a lot of little writing here on the right-hand side. Okay, I'll turn it back over to David.
Right. So we wanted to just give you a heads up or a little visual on what you're going to see when Jen takes you into the program. But we follow a really aligned introductory lesson. That's the input, the interactive exercise, and then the opportunity, and the interactive exercise is the opportunity for the students to participate in a way to show what they've learned. But it always starts with a virtual professor who gives the students the input and provides a little bit of modeling. And then it moves the students into, again, an opportunity to apply what they've learned in an interactive way. And again, Jen talked about that multisensory approach. We do offer opportunities to click on the sound to hear the directions, and then lots of opportunities for either dragging and dropping or writing as well. Is actually integrated into these exercises. And this is in the collaborative listening and speaking. That's that other bucket that Jen talked about, opportunities to understand how we use language functionally through listening and speaking. One of the things that we really tried to do was we really tried to integrate opportunities for academic integration. So we have opportunities for the students to have examples or visuals around science, math, social studies, a lot of opportunities for them to apply what they've learned and use it in other content areas. Keep in mind that one of the things that we held true to, and we thought that this was really important, is language is always the driver here. The passenger or the content is in the passenger seat. That might be a context in science, math, or social studies, but we're always looking for them to apply the language skill or the language opportunity. And then lastly, when we look at language function and construction, you're going to see we do provide a lot of different ways for them to understand, whether it's text structure, text types, examples, drag and drop, but things that we really wanted to make contextualize for our students. And really break it down. And these are the very things that our students that, based on our research, are struggling with in other content courses. And unless these language skills are explicitly taught or broken up or scaffolded, our students really struggle with this type of language, because they might be making a lot of those connections, but there's still some really explicit instruction that needs to be taught. And that's where we're going with our lessons here. So around scaffolded instruction, we wanted to just throw out a question. How do you provide focused or scaffolded instruction for your students that need that additional support in language? What are some ways that you might be thinking of, ways that you shelter instruction through SEDI strategies or sheltered skills? But what are some ways that we just wanted to throw that out into the chat? What are some ways that you scaffold your instruction? And this could be in-house learning or face-to-face, as well as virtual learning, which has taken on its own set of changes and demands as well. So anything in the chat? Oh, good. Immersive reader. Good. So immersive reader allows a student to do a little bit of translating. It highlights vocabulary. Okay. Anything else that you might use to scaffold language instruction for your language learners? All right.
Okay, well,
Thanks,
thank you
Jen.
for that. Yeah, so these next couple of slides, I tried to explain it, but hopefully this will give you a better visual. So, you know, in addition to the online lessons, the teacher has access to this downloadable. So this just kind of gives you an example of a downloadable. So as I mentioned, the downloadable has like a little warm up and then some modeling to do with your students. Again, you know, through synchronous learning, or if you're in a, you know, a small group instruction, and once we're back in the classroom, or maybe some of you already are, I'm not sure. So this just gives you an example from foundational literacy skills bucket, and then the collaborative listening and speaking bucket. And then you'll notice in the program, like if a student is having challenges with a certain skill or a certain lesson, it's really nice then to use this downloadable and then send them back in to work on the practice assignments. So the practice assignments, like here's an example in foundational literacy skills. They have some clues here, and then they're writing in the word based on the clues, and then they use that word in a sentence. And then in the collaborative listening and speaking, you can see the instructions are asking them to, you know, look at the image, and then based on the image, type in descriptive words of each picture. So getting them to use some of those important writing skills.
All right. So lastly, there's been some question around what are these levels? Why you're talking about level 2, but you're referring to level 1. But this gives you an idea of just how we developed our ELD level 1 versus ELD level 2. I'll start with that very top kind of bullet. Our ELD level 1 was designed for our newcomers that are entering the US school system like from like day 1. All the way up to about 2 years or 24 months. Our ELD level 2, because we had such great feedback from our teachers around ELD level 1, you know, the question that remains is, well, where do they go from here? They still need support in English language development. And this is a lot of the impetus around the ELD level 2, because our students, our long-term English learners, or our students that are at that intermediate level still need support in English language development. In level 1, it's the lessons are highly scaffolded and really focus a lot around building functional vocabulary for our students. And the lessons are really connected to everyday school life versus in ELD level 2, we start integrating subject matter around social studies, math, and science, some of those cross-cutting standards. Both offer, there's online interactive activities. So the student gets a chance, the virtual professor, and then the student gets a chance to apply those skills in an online virtual platform. In level 1, we offer something called the American School Culture, and it's in and of itself chapters around building some of that acculturation around the American school culture. And that's with a connection to building that functional vocabulary. Both ELD level 1 and ELD level 2 have downloadable lessons and student activities to elevate the opportunity to apply those language skills. In level 2, we provide a lot more opportunities for the students to have online practice where they're actually typing into the online assignment and actually turning that into the teacher for that kind of practice, and a lot of writing opportunities in those downloadables.
Great, thanks. Thanks, David. So I'm going to switch gears here and go into the program. I'm going to log in. I have a demo account here, so I'm going to log in as a demo teacher. And just kind of, walk you through a few things. So let's first, you can see we have, level 1 and level 2, but first let's take a look at the level 2 entry assessment. So, as we mentioned there in the presentation, it's those 3 buckets: the foundational literacy skills, collaborative listening and speaking, language, function, and construction. So I'm just going to pop in and show you a couple of assessment questions in each area so you can kind of get a feel for what it's like. I'm just going to bounce around here. Let's look at question 15 here.
Listen to the word sticker. Choose the word or words below that have the same sound.
So there's a few questions, like as I mentioned, it has one standard, but there's more than one question that's assessing their knowledge of R-controlled vowels. Let's jump here.
What word or words below has the schwa sound in electricity?
Okay, so that was in the foundational literacy skills area. Let's look at a couple in the collaborative listening and speaking. We'll go here.
Listen to the short presentation. Please take notes as necessary.
So you can see, I'm not going to play this because it's longer and I want to be cognizant of our time, but it's they have the visual here, and then they can listen and read along with the passage, and then they're going to answer questions about that passage.
Choose the question that is most relevant to the topic.
And then I'll show you one other part here. And if you want to, this is just a navigation thing, but see the video larger, you can get rid of the menu there on the left-hand side.
When the first signs of a storm appear, the air pressure begins to fall, a breeze picks up, and the ocean swells increase to 10 to 15 feet. White cirrus clouds from the growing storm appear on the horizon. A hurricane warning is issued, and residents are ordered to evacuate. What is a hurricane? A hurricane is a large rotating storm with high-speed winds that form over warm waters in tropical areas. When warm air over the water rises, it is replaced by cooler air. The cooler air will then warm and start to rise. This mysterious cycle causes huge storm clouds to form. These storm clouds will begin to rotate with the spin of the earth. If there is enough warm water, the cycle will continue, and the storm clouds and wind speeds will grow, causing a hurricane to form.
Which statement below best describes the relationship between air temperatures and hurricanes?
So from there, they'll select the best answer. And so that was a couple in the collaborative listening and speaking bucket area. And then the last one, language, function, and construction. I'll show you assessment question in this. So
read the passage below.
So this is a comparison between owning an electric versus a gasoline-powered vehicle. They have a little chart and then their passage, and then they're answering questions about the purpose of the passage. And there's a few more with, that type of question type. So I'm sorry to rush through here, but I see we have 5 minutes and there's several other things I want to be able to show you. Let me pull my menu back up. So let's look at a couple of lessons. So in foundational literacy skills, we looked at, the question there around our control vowels. And then you'll see lesson 8 is on our control vowels. I'll show you a little bit of that. One thing I wanted to point out is when students go into the lesson modules, they have to get an 80% or higher. So they would start with lesson 1. They would have to achieve 80% or higher to move on to lesson 2. If they don't, then they'll have to redo lesson 1 until they can achieve that 80% plus mark. I'll just show you a little bit of this.
Today we are going to learn about how vowel sounds can be changed when there is the letter R after it. These are called R-controlled vowels. Understanding how to read a word with an R-controlled vowel can help you read and pronounce the word correctly. Knowing the spelling patterns of the various R-controlled vowels will also help you spell words correctly. The first R-controlled vowel I'm going to introduce is the R sound. Say the sound with me, R. The R sound can be spelled with the letters AR, like in star, architect, and market. The letter R after the vowel A makes the R sound. The second R-controlled vowel I'm going to introduce is the sound. ER, IR, and UR all make the sound Say the sound with me, The can be spelled ER like in tiger, IR like in bird, and UR like in purse.
Okay, I'm just gonna, again, for the sake of time, stop it there. But this gives you an idea of, the virtual professor provides the lesson input. And then here you can see we have a chart for them to reference.
Look at the R-controlled vowel spelling patterns in the chart. Click on the audio button to hear the sound.
So they have the sound and then the corresponding spelling patterns.
R, or. Click on the audio button to hear the word. Select the correct spelling of the word.
Purple. Turtle.
So you can see this is a longer lesson. So I'm going to jump back to, so I can show you a lesson in another category. So that was in foundational literacy skills. Now let's go into collaborative listening and speaking. And I'll show you a little bit on lesson 6. Start at the beginning here.
The ability to explain to others ideas and concepts you have learned after reading a passage or viewing a video is important. In this lesson, you will go over some explanatory techniques. Explanatory techniques are skills you can use to help you explain things more clearly. Also, by recognizing these techniques when you read or view content, you can also better understand what is being explained. One explanatory technique you can use is to compare two or more ideas or things. To compare is to note similarities. Words for comparison include also, as well as, and equally. Here is an example of using a comparison word to explain the formula for the area of a square.
The formula for finding the area of a square is also used for a rectangle.
A second technique is to contrast, which is the opposite of to compare. When you contrast, you find differences between ideas or things. Words and phrases for contrasting include however, unlike, in contrast to, and on the other hand. Here's an example of using a contrast word to explain the differences between hurricanes and tornadoes.
Hurricanes occur in coastal areas, unlike tornadoes, which occur on land.
So again, I'm going to just stop it there. It's a little bit of a longer input video, but once they go through that, and they can watch it multiple times because there's a lot of material covered, then they'll go into their activities, and they have a reference chart here that we created. So it'll show the explanatory technique, the meaning and the purpose, and then examples of words that are typically used, and then an example of it used in a sentence. And they can always refer back to that as they go through and answer the questions.
Select the explanatory technique used in the text or video. Read and listen to the passage below. select the explanatory technique used. Warmer weather due to global warming is affecting the polar bear's dens. If the winter weather is warmer than usual, it may result in the collapse of the maternity dens for the newborn polar bear cubs. This leaves the polar bear cubs unprotected and is one reason for the rise in their mortality rate.
So based on that, they will select their appropriate response. And I know we're about out of time. I just wanted to show one last quick thing. Let me pull this up. So I talked a little bit about the downloadable resources. So if you go to level 2 downloadables in foundational literacy skills, I'll just select lesson 8 because we looked a little bit about our control vowels. So, you know, the teacher has this, the warm up and the modeling to do with the students. And then it references task 1, they go into the online program. But as you scroll down, we do have an answer key, you know, that's here and available. So now, let's say, you know, one of your students is having a challenge with our control vowels, then what you can do is send them back into the program, the lesson modules, and let me click on foundational literacy skills. So the online lessons, so not to be too confusing here, but the online lessons are lessons 1 through 13, right? And they have to get 80% or higher to move on to the next lesson as they go through it. With the downloadable or the practice assignments, those don't have to be done in any order. So you can say, you know, if a student has all of these skills down pat, then you could suggest they just go right into lesson 8 and they work in the program. And this is different in the sense that it's not graded. The system grades the online lesson modules. With the practice assignments, it really allows the students to type into the program, submit it, and you know, teachers can then evaluate it, make their own formative assessment on how that student is doing. So you can see I've been in here answering questions already, but gives the instructions. So click on the audio button to hear the word, select the word or words that have the sound like in the word shirt, type only the words in the spaces below in the picture.
Barn, hammer, nurse.
So they go through that exercise, those questions, and then I think I showed this in the presentation, but this, you know, gives them some clues. Has a is another word for the day you were born, and then they basically type the word in and then use that word in a sentence. And once they go through all these practice assignments, then it will just ask them, are you ready for your teacher to review your answers? And they submit yes. So I know we're a little over time and I didn't get to show you the data, but you know, just being able to go in and kind of decipher you know, how your students did, but hopefully you get a pretty decent overview. And for now, I just kind of want to open it up and see if anybody has any questions.
Hey, Jennifer, this one just popped up while you were on that slide or on that example, but could you show us a more advanced level? I'm not quite sure what that would be.
More advanced levels in like a particular area, or you show us more advanced level?
Yeah, she said yes, in a particular area.
All right, so let me click back over here. I'm going to go back into lesson 6. Oops, it's one too many. So I think this section, well, you know, excuse me. Sorry about that. So this, you know, the lessons, you know, like I mentioned, they're each covering a particular ELD standard. Some of them, you know, when there's multiple substandards, some of the lessons like this one can be very long, and some of the, you know, the things covered or the topics are pretty challenging. I think this is one of them, so I'm going to play this lesson.
It is important to know how to make inferences and draw conclusions because this helps you to better understand what you are reading or viewing. Making an inference means to figure out missing information using facts, data, or evidence. In other words, you are reading between the lines or making an educated guess about what is not directly stated or shown. You are able to make an inference because you have some previous knowledge about the subject. When you combine background knowledge with written or visual cues, you can make an inference. Clues plus background knowledge equals inference. Some of the things that you can infer about people are personality traits, occupation, and physical or mental state. You can also infer about things such as location, weather, or quality. Here are some examples of inferences that can be made from this picture. It is windy and rainy. It is cold outside. The woman is very wet. The umbrella is not very strong. Let us now draw some conclusions from the same picture. The woman may turn around and go home because she looks wet and cold. The woman may need to buy a better umbrella. In order to draw our conclusion, we need to make inferences. You use inferences and stated facts to draw a conclusion.
So then I'll just show you a few of the, the question types in here, and then you can let me know if this was, what you were wanting to see, something a little more challenging.
Read the paragraph below and select the best answer or answers for each question.
I'm sorry, Christy, go ahead.
I was just going to say there was a question. Is there a text transcription that goes with each video?
No, like closed captioning or?
Yeah.
Yeah, like if they could read it instead of listening to it. Read it and listen to it.
Yes, so for the lesson input like that we just saw, so that information, like we put the keywords and phrases, in on screen along with the virtual professor, and they have the opportunity to watch it as many times as they need to refer back to it. And then like for this question type, for example, it is audio, but they can also follow along. So we put the text there as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
additionally, I just wanted to add that for the input for the virtual professor, one thing that has been really successful is sometimes the teacher will just launch the video with a group or the class and start and stop the video and ask clarification questions, checks for understanding, maybe adding a little more information. A lot of times the virtual professor is kind of like the side-by-side teacher with the actual homeroom teacher. And that really helps promote listening skills, comprehension skills for our English learners. And it helps them to stop and clarify and ask questions as well.
Thanks, David. Do we have any more questions?
Yep. Based on the data, what is the key intervention for LTELs?
I can answer that. The advanced foundational skills have been a game changer for our long-term English learners because much of the skills that they're learning in the advanced foundational skills has to do with their spelling patterns and just some of their writing patterns. Additionally, in that third bucket, in the language function and construction, we really break up the aspects of grammar. We talk about cohesion. So there are some pieces in there that have been actual, just really game changers for our students in that fourth domain of writing. So that's been we've had some really good data and feedback around those parts. So, but the advanced foundational skills has really been a game changer for our long-term English learners because it's explaining stuff, things that I call them little glitches that they've always had in their language, but they were never explicitly taught because they missed that opportunity in elementary school, and kind of that K4 foundational skills venue. Somebody asked Jen, they said if they're willing to stay on, can you show them the data where we access the data? I'm not sure, but I thought if, once we conclude, if they wanted to stay on for a minute, I was just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked. If you don't mind, can we, and maybe you can put it in the chat. What I would like to do is, and we can do it today too. I have another meeting right after this. So I'd love to, take you in and show you the data if you can, if we can just schedule it a little. What time zone are you on?
We have, I think, is that Eastern time zone?
Eastern time zone. So let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe we could do it at 4:30 your time. Would that be okay? Sorry about this. It's a little awkward, but yeah, when I'm screen sharing, I can't see the chat, so I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
She
sorry.
said, yeah, that might be
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, so maybe we can do that at a different time. We
Yeah.
have 2 other questions I just wanted to fit in real quick.
Okay.
If we only had the opportunity to do one part of the program with our LTELs, which part would you suggest?
Oh gosh, that is that it really depends on the data, and that's why we were so careful about the entry and exit assessments, because the gaps that our long-term English learners have, they're all over the place. So you might have students that are scoring very strong in foundational skills, the advanced foundational skills, but really lacking in the collaborative listening and speaking or the language functioning and construction. So the data, the data is what kind of speaks to us. So my response to that is there isn't any one. You'll see trends in where the students are, the gaps that the students have. So I can't really say with any sort of detail that I would choose one part or one section over another. It really depends on the gaps that the students have. So
Right.
that would be my response, especially with our work with our long-term English learners.
Yeah, and I was just gonna, come on, in addition to that. So the main thing is in those 3 assessment areas, once students have had a chance to do all 3 of those assessment areas, then you're able to go in and look at the data for each one of your students and how they scored in each of those 3 kind of bucket areas. And then depending on their score, that really dictates the lesson bucket or buckets that they need to go in. So that's kind of how we design the program, is to really uncover those skill gaps. And then based on that student skill gaps, the lesson bucket that they should go through. And oftentimes it's all 3 lesson buckets. So that's a good question, but it's a tough question.
And it looks like the last question is, are students able to go back into a lesson on their own to review independently?
Yes, they are. we want them to. we want them because it is an online platform. We want them to be able to access these lessons at home, with, of course, with the consent of the teacher and the way the teachers might be kind of driving the instruction for the student. But we absolutely want them to access and listen to the virtual professor, the video input, and try those interactive activities out. And that's one of the reasons why we built in the 80%, is because these lessons and I'm going to call it the level 2 are so robust, and so there are a lot of parts. So one standard might have 6 different lessons built into it. We absolutely want them to go home and kind of commit to trying this stuff out.
Great, and that looks like the end of the questions we have.
Oh, thank you, Christy, and thanks everyone. And for
Thank
the
you.
person that
Great
was
questions.
sorry, David, but that was asking about, wanting to see the data. I just want to make sure that, we show you what you need to see. So I have this slide up. Studica, just so you know, they are a partner in education and their contact information is here, or maybe your representative. If you don't, you can just reach out to the contacts here. And then, I'll promptly set up another Zoom call and we can show you the data or anything else, that you want to see. And that holds true for anybody on the call today. If they want a more in-depth demo or anything else, please reach out to Studica. And thank you so much, everybody. I know it's the holidays, so we appreciate you taking time and joining us today.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and take care of yourselves.
Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Christy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, David.
Oh, and
Bye.
everyone, just a reminder to take that quick survey as you're closing, and thanks again.